Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gangana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Hello, welcome. These teachings are from a work assigned to Adi Sankaracharya, which is called Aparokshanabuthi, or self-realization, or direct perception of the self, of the Atman. And it is an introduction to Vedanta. It speaks about Raja Yoga with a Vedantic vision. So listen very carefully to these teachings, reflect upon them, then meditate upon these teachings so that they can bear fruit in your heart. May you all find freedom. Moving on, still in verse 12, we will be here and we will see two different lines coming out from this. So this is speaking about vichara, inquiry. But this inquiry, as you will see, we will move on into the nature of existence, and by discrimination, discarding that which is not real, embracing that which is real alone. This is the line of inquiry, of vichara. But in this sentence, it starts with, who am I? And who am I in the line of vichara has one meaning. But then it opens up to a path of its own, which is Atmavichara, which is self-inquiry. And in this, it is completely different. Well, the same requirements are there, even more so, because it implies complete abstraction of supposed existence, complete abstraction. So these requirements, the before mentioned requirements are there, and even more so, because in inquiry, you are using your mind to acknowledge the nature of existence, and by reasoning you are discarding that which is not real. So it gives you a basis to put all these things aside. In this self-inquiry, it is different. One of the greatest expounders of self-inquiry was Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. And despite him saying that nothing else was required, this should be put into context. So this is in the context of someone that from a very early age has left his home, maybe 16, not sure, has left his home, abandoned worldly life, human life, as normal people perceived it, went to a holy place, and there it remained. And he spent years and years in deep meditation, in silence. So this, nothing else is required, is in his context. But this has been brought to a context of people with a normal life full of attachments, fears, dependencies, and for them it doesn't work like this. So these qualifications that I've spoken previously are needed, and even more so that it is possible. Or else it's just a mental exercise that doesn't take anywhere. So, self-inquiry is intended to dive deep into the source of the self, into the source of identity, into silence, into stillness. And by doing so, abstracting of everything else. Without that stillness, without that silence, it is not possible. It just becomes an intellectual exercise with no meaning. So there's this idea that you should repeat the question as a mantra. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Or some use it as a way to calm the mind and bring it to stillness. But that's not really the point. When you ask the question, who am I? Your attention moves automatically to a place, to the resting place. That place where attention remains in the absence of thought. In the absence of thoughts, attention rests in a place. For this to be contemplated, thoughts must have subsided, majority. There must be calmness of the mind, a very big degree of detachment, fruits of renunciation. Because without it, you cannot contemplate it, or even if you contemplate it a little bit, you will lose it again. And that's not the point. So, as you ask the question, who am I? If your mind is subtle enough, you will perceive the mind moving to a place and staying there. So, it is a place, it's like a magnet. It's the point zero of the universe. And it's like a magnet that when attention rests, it stays there. So when there's no thoughts, attention rests there. So for example, one way very easy to see is when you're practicing meditation, but meditation, silent meditation, into silence. And you want to focus in that silent stillness. And as a thought arises, you are able to observe that the mind moves towards the thought, moving away from that center. So a normal mind which is engrossed by thoughts, it is moving from one thought to the other, but always in an outward direction, expanding, like the universe, expanding somewhere, but away from its center. So does the mind, moving from thought to thought, it expands, it goes away from a center. So this center is the center of identity, the center of silence. It is the center of the universe, of existence. Most importantly, it is the center of identity. And this self-inquiry is about not only to make this journey, because if you have to say, who am I, constantly to go back there, that means there's no calmness of the mind. There's no silence yet. That means there's not enough detachment, purity, truth. So these things are missing. And you cannot remain still. And by doing this, who am I? And then going back and coming back again. It's like practicing a normal meditation with a normal meditation technique. Then for this purpose, there are other things that are better. But as you reach this level, a certain level of silence and stillness and detachment, you are able to remain more and more. You can fix your mind in a place and remain there. And this is where this self-inquiry becomes fruitful. So as you ask the question, who am I? Attention moves to a place, to that source. And then it is intended to stay there, stay there. And if by any chance there is a thought that arises, something that disturbs attention, attention moves away again, you bring it back. Either by the feeling of identity, because mind is subtle, you can grasp this. So either by the feeling of identity or by asking the question again, in the sense that mind moves in an outward direction. Who am I brings it to the source. It reminds the I. I is like a magnetic force that brings back the mind again until it gets reabsorbed back into the self. So this practice is actually more advanced. So it needs a big degree, like I've explained, of silence, stillness, detachment, purity, a very big degree of dispassion towards the world, to be able, so that you are able to practice it. Seekers tend to mistake this with a repetition of a sentence. Like if I repeat this so many times and I reflect about this, then it will reveal itself. It's not the way. It's not about that. It is about resting at the source, bringing the mind at the source, to be reabsorbed again. Because all creation is moving away, distancing itself from the source. It comes from a very small point, more or less, in this context. It's a central point that is the center of identity, which is the center of the whole universe, seen and unseen. And it is grasped through the perception of identity. Because it is the repetition of I, that moves attention, that brings it back there. But it is the natural place for the mind to rest upon. It's like the bottom of the lake. This is its natural place. So when you reach the state of no thought, this is where the mind is resting. As thoughts arise, attention moves away from it. So this is why it is coming back to the natural state. But to be able to come back to the natural state, these gross habits must be cut off. So in this practice, there is no world, there are no others, nothing else matters apart from remaining there. Who am I? I. The attention stays there, goes there, and then you stay there. Like a child that sits at the doorstep, waiting for the door to open. This is where the seeker of truth sits, in this place, waiting for that final reabsorption. Cutting away all ties with everything that disturbs this remaining at the source. And this is something that becomes natural with time. But it starts with the posture, the meditation posture, the effort, all of this into that stillness. And he closes himself to everything else, discards everything else as unreal. Not even by the source of reasoning. Remaining there more and more, more and more. And whatever disturbs, whatever tries to disturb that stillness is cast aside immediately. And whenever you lose the grasp of identity, the grasp of the source, when you lose that stillness, you ask the question, who am I? And as you say, I, attention goes there again. And there it stays. The more you stay there, the less attention and importance you are giving to the rest. And without your attention, without your importance, it starts to dissolve, until it vanishes completely. And only that brightness, that fullness of realization, only that will remain. Self-inquiry.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.